Chapter 1. The Proposal I Didn't Mean to Make. The Galactic Marketplace. The Tazari's hub was a bustling beacon of intergalactic trade and culture, a sprawling space station that orbited the glittering blue planet of Nix 14. It was a place where species from across the galaxy came to trade rare goods, form uneasy alliances, and occasionally get themselves into trouble. For Ethan Carter, trouble seemed to find him no matter where he went. A scrappy human trader and mechanic from Earth, Ethan had spent years hopping from one star system to the next, trying to eke out a living in a galaxy that didn't seem to have much use for humans. Earth's reputation as a latecomer to the galactic scene meant that people like Ethan were often dismissed as second-rate merchants or opportunistic scavengers. But Ethan had learned to get by. His sharp wit and knack for fixing just about anything mechanical had earned him enough credibility to keep his ship, the Stargazer, running and his stomach full. He'd come to the Tazari's hub to pick up parts for his aging ship's thrusters, but as usual, he'd ended up wandering into the more colorful sections of the marketplace. The Tazari's marketplace was a sensory overload. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and engine grease, and the chatter of countless alien tongues filled the corridors. Ethan passed vendors hawking crystalline artifacts, glowing orbs of bioluminescent fungi, and even what appeared to be a cage full of miniature, floating jellyfish. This place never gets old, Ethan muttered to himself, his gaze darting between the vibrant stalls. He just bartered for a set of plasma coils when he heard a commotion coming from one of the central plazas. Curiosity getting the better of him, Ethan made his way toward the noise. A crowd had gathered around a raised platform, where a group of tall, imposing aliens stood in ornate armor. At the center of the group was a figure who immediately commanded attention. A woman with radiant, shimmering skin that shifted between shades of gold and deep violet, her eyes glowing like twin suns. Her presence was magnetic, and the crowd seemed both awestruck and fearful. Ethan leaned toward a nearby vendor. "What's going on here?" The vendor, a squat alien with 6 eyes and a gruff voice, snorted. "That's Queen Zarithia of the Ilari Dominion. She's here for some diplomatic nonsense. Don't get too close, human. She's not someone you want to upset." Ethan frowned. He'd heard of the Ilari Dominion, one of the most powerful and reclusive empires in the galaxy. Their queen was said to be as cunning as she was beautiful, ruler who had united dozens of warring factions under her banner. But why was she here, on a neutral trading hub? As Ethan watched, the queen raised a hand, and the crowd fell silent. She spoke in a melodic but commanding voice, her words translated automatically by the station's universal translator. "People of Tazaris, I come not as a conqueror, but as an ally. The Ilari Dominion seeks to strengthen its ties with the wider galaxy. Let this be a day of unity." The crowd erupted into applause, but Ethan noticed that many of the station's regulars looked uneasy. The Ilari were known for their ruthlessness, and few believed their queen's words at face value. A misunderstanding. Ethan's curiosity was piqued, but he had no intention of sticking around for a royal procession. He turned to leave only to bump into someone. "Watch it!" he exclaimed, stumbling back. The person he'd collided with was one of the Ilari Queen's guards, a towering figure with sharp, crystalline armor and a helmet that obscured their face. The guard growled something in their native tongue, and before Ethan could apologize, they grabbed him by the arm and dragged him toward the platform. "Hey, let go!" Ethan protested, struggling against the guard's iron grip. The crowd parted, murmuring in confusion as Ethan was hauled up onto the platform and deposited unceremoniously at the queen's feet. Queen Zarithia tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing as she studied him. "Who is this human?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity and mild amusement. Ethan scrambled to his feet, his heart racing. Hi. Sorry about that. I think there's been a mistake. I was just trying to leave." The queen's lips curved into a faint smile. "A mistake, you say? And yet, you find yourself before me." Ethan's mouth went dry. He had no idea how to navigate this situation. "Look, Your Majesty, I didn't mean to dash." Before he could finish, the guard who dragged him up spoke in a low, guttural voice. The translator rendered their words as, "He approached you with an offering, my queen, a gesture of courtship." Ethan's eyes widened. "Wait, what? No, that's not dash." The queen raised a hand, silencing him. An offering? She glanced at the plasma coils still clutched in his hands. Curious. A human seeking to court the queen of the Olari. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but the queen stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. Tell me, human, she said, her tone teasing but sharp. Why do you seek my favor? I don't. Ethan blurted. This is all a big misunderstanding. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the queen studied him, her glowing eyes seeming to pierce straight through him. After a long, tense moment, she smiled a slow, deliberate smile that sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. Very well, she said. I accept your proposal. Ethan blinked. You. What? The queen turned to her guards. Prepare for the binding ceremony. This human has shown great boldness in approaching me. Let us see if he is worthy. The crowd erupted into murmurs, and Ethan felt like the ground had been pulled out from under him. Wait, I didn't propose to you. This is a mistake. But the queen was already turning away, her guards moving to escort him off the platform. As they led him toward the palace-like quarters reserved for the Olari delegation, Ethan's mind raced. How, he muttered to himself, did I get into this mess? A royal dilemma. Hours later, Ethan found himself seated in a lavish chamber that looked more like an art gallery than a living space. The walls were adorned with glowing murals that shifted and pulsed with life, and the air was filled with the faint scent of something sweet and floral. Across from him, Queen Zarithia sat on a throne-like chair, her expression unreadable. Between them was a table laden with alien delicacies, most of which Ethan didn't recognize. You seem nervous, human, the queen said, her voice smooth. Ethan cleared his throat. Yeah, well, I didn't exactly plan on proposing to an alien queen today. Zarithia's lips curved into a faint smile. And yet, here you are. Tell me, what do humans think of such unions? Do your people often court their rulers in such a bold fashion? Ethan groaned. Look, I wasn't trying to court you. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The queen leaned forward, her glowing eyes locking onto his. You intrigue me, Ethan Carter. Whether by accident or intention, you've set events in motion that cannot be undone. The question is, what will you do now? Ethan hesitated. Despite his panic, he couldn't help but feel a strange pull toward her. There was something magnetic about her presence, something that made him want to understand her. I guess, he said slowly, I'll try not to mess things up any more than I already have. The queen chuckled softly. A wise answer. Perhaps there is hope for you yet. As the evening wore on, Ethan began to realize that his accidental proposal might have been the least of his worries. The Olari queen was more than just a ruler, she was a force to be reckoned with. And somehow, against all odds, he had become a part of her story. Chapter 2. The Binding Ceremony. A Culture of Power. Ethan's mind spun as the queen's words echoed in his ears. His accidental proposal, a misunderstanding born from a universal translator and a pair of plasma coils, was being treated as the beginning of a royal union. A union with Queen Zarithia, the most powerful figure in the Olari Dominion. The Olari were not just any alien species. Their empire was built on the backs of countless conquests, their advanced technology and military precision making them nearly unstoppable. And now, Ethan, a simple trader from Earth, was being thrust into the middle of it all. The morning after his proposal, Ethan found himself escorted to the Hall of Luminescence, a massive chamber in the Queen's temporary palace aboard the Tazari's hub. The hall was a testament to Olari grandeur, with towering crystalline pillars that refracted light into dazzling rainbows and murals depicting the history of the Olari Dominion. At the far end of the chamber, Queen Zarithia stood, surrounded by her advisors and guards. Do not embarrass yourself, one of the guards muttered as they pushed Ethan forward. Ethan swallowed hard. Not planning on it, he muttered under his breath. The ceremony begins. The room was packed with spectators, including Olari nobles, human diplomats, and curious onlookers from other species. It was clear that news of the event had spread far and wide. Some watched with fascination, while others whispered to one another, their expressions a mix of amusement and disbelief. Queen Zarithia raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. Her golden eyes scanned the crowd before settling on Ethan. Today marks the beginning of a union unlike any other, she said, her voice resonating through the hall. A bold human has stepped forward, challenging tradition and offering a path toward unity between our peoples. Ethan opened his mouth to protest, but the sharp glare of one of the guards stopped him. The Queen continued, gesturing for Ethan to approach. Ethan Carter, you have proven yourself courageous whether by intention or accident. Do you stand ready to accept the responsibilities of this union? Ethan hesitated, his heart pounding. He had no idea what those responsibilities entailed, but he knew that saying no was not an option. I guess I do. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, and Ethan could feel his face flush with embarrassment. Zarithia's lips curved into a faint smile, though whether it was out of amusement or approval, he couldn't tell. Then let the binding ritual commence, she declared. The binding ritual. Ethan had no idea what to expect, but what followed was a surreal blend of ancient tradition and advanced technology. A pair of attendants brought forward a glowing crystal, its surface swirling with vibrant colors. The Queen placed her hand on the crystal, and Ethan was instructed to do the same. As his fingers touched the cool surface, a strange sensation coursed through him, a mix of warmth and pressure, as if the crystal were alive. The colors within the crystal began to shift, swirling faster and faster until they coalesced into a single, blindingly bright light. The crystal binds your energies, one of the advisors explained. It is a symbol of trust and unity. The strength of your bond will determine the strength of your leadership. Ethan frowned. No pressure then. Zarithia shot him a warning glance, but there was a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Focus, human. This is as much a test of your resolve as it is a ceremony. He nodded, doing his best to concentrate. The light within the crystal seemed to respond, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. When the ceremony finally ended, the crowd erupted into applause, though Ethan suspected some of the cheers were more mocking than genuine. The aftermath. After the ceremony, Ethan was whisked away to the Queen's private chambers, where a small feast had been prepared. The room was a stark contrast to the grandiose hall, a quiet, intimate space filled with soft light and delicate furnishings. Zarithia poured herself a glass of glowing amber liquid and gestured for Ethan to sit. You handled yourself well today, she said, her tone surprisingly gentle. Thanks, Ethan replied, sinking into a chair. But I have to ask, why are you going along with this? You're a queen. You could have just said no and avoided this whole mess. Zarithia studied him for a moment before answering. The Alari value boldness and unpredictability. Your unconventional approach has intrigued my people. It is rare for a human to challenge our traditions, even unintentionally. Ethan sighed. So this is all some kind of political stunt? Not entirely, she said, sipping her drink. I see potential in you, Ethan Carter. You may not realize it, but you've already begun to win over some of my advisors. And if you succeed, this alliance could change the course of galactic history. He blinked. No pressure, right? Zarithia smiled, her golden eyes gleaming. None at all. A new challenge. As the days passed, Ethan began to adjust to his new role, though not without difficulty. He was given a crash course in Alari customs and politics, much of which seemed designed to test his patience. The Queen's advisors were skeptical of him, and some openly questioned his worthiness. But Ethan refused to give up. He threw himself into the lessons, learning everything he could about the Alari people and their culture. To his surprise, he found himself bonding with Zarithia, who proved to be far more complex than he'd initially thought. Beneath her regal exterior was a sharp wit and a deep sense of duty to her people. One evening, as they reviewed a set of diplomatic reports, Zarithia leaned back in her chair and studied him. You've changed since the ceremony. Ethan raised an eyebrow. How so? You're taking this seriously, she said. Most would have run by now. He smirked. Well, I figured running would probably get me killed. Besides, I kind of like proving people wrong. Zarithia chuckled softly. Good. You'll need that resolve if you're to survive what's coming. Ethan frowned. What's coming? Her expression turned serious. The Zareth Order. A faction within my empire that opposes this alliance. They see your presence as a threat to our traditions. Let me guess, they're not going to send a fruit basket. Zarithia's lips twitched. No, they're not. But together, we can stop them. If you're willing to stand by my side. Ethan met her gaze, his determination solidifying. I'm in. Chapter 3. The first challenge: Whispers of the Zareth Order. The days following Ethan's accidental proposal and the shocking acceptance by Queen Zarethia had been a blur. Diplomatic meetings, crash courses on Alari customs, and endless scrutiny from the Queen's court left him feeling out of place. But it wasn't the alien traditions or the skeptical stares of the nobles that worried him the most. It was the shadowy threat of the Zareth Order. This extremist faction within the Alari Dominion opposed any alliance with outsiders. To them, Zarethia's willingness to work with humanity was a betrayal of Alari sovereignty. They had already made their displeasure known through anonymous threats, sabotage, and whispers of rebellion. Ethan sat in the dimly lit war room, surrounded by holographic displays of Alari star systems. Beside him, Zarethia looked regal and composed, though her glowing golden eyes betrayed a glimmer of frustration. "We've intercepted another communication from the Zareth Order," said General Kalos, one of Zarethia's most trusted military advisors. His crystalline armor shimmered faintly as he gestured to a hovering hologram. "They're planning to disrupt the diplomatic convoy bound for the Terran Alliance Summit on Velarak 7. Zarethia's expression darkened. "If they succeed, it will shatter the trust we've worked so hard to build. We cannot let this happen." Ethan leaned forward, studying the hologram. "How do they plan to attack?" Kalos gestured to the display, which zoomed in on a cluster of asteroid fields near Velarak 7. "We believe they'll ambush the convoy here. The asteroid belt provides ample cover, and their ships are small and fast, perfect for hit-and-run tactics." Ethan frowned. "So, what's the plan?" Zarethia turned to him, her tone firm. "We'll intercept them before they reach the convoy. A small, agile strike team will have the best chance of success." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess you want me to be part of this small, agile team." Zarethia's lips curved into a faint smile. "You're quick to catch on." Into the asteroid belt. Ethan found himself aboard the Eclipse Spear, a sleek Alari warship designed for speed and precision. It was nothing like the clunky freighters he was used to piloting. Every surface seemed to hum with barely contained energy, and the controls responded with almost eerie accuracy. Zarethia stood at the helm, her presence commanding even in the cramped quarters of the bridge. Ethan couldn't help but marvel at how effortlessly she navigated both the complexities of leadership and the high-tech systems of the Alari fleet. "You seem nervous," Zarethia said, glancing at him as he adjusted the straps of his harness. "Wouldn't you be?" Ethan replied. "I'm about to go head-to-head with a group of extremists who'd love nothing more than to see me dead." Zarethia's expression softened, though her voice remained firm. "You've handled worse situations, Ethan. Trust in your instincts and in me." He gave her a half-smile. "I'll try." The Eclipse Spear slipped into the asteroid field, its cloaking systems rendering it nearly invisible. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the crew scanned for signs of the Zareth Order's ships. Ethan sat beside Zarethia, monitoring the displays. "There," Zarethia said, pointing to a cluster of red blips appearing on the scanner. "They're waiting in formation. 3 ships, heavily armed but lightly armored." Ethan leaned closer. "If we can disrupt their formation, we might be able to take them out before they know what hit them." Zarethia nodded. "Agreed. Kalos, prepare the strike team. Ethan, you're with me." "Of course I am," Ethan muttered under his breath, earning a smirk from the Queen. The ambush. The strike team consisted of a mix of Alari warriors and human operatives, each armed with advanced weaponry. Their mission was simple: disable the Zareth Order ships before they could launch their attack. As they exited the Eclipse Spear in small, maneuverable fighters, Ethan felt a surge of adrenaline. He'd been in plenty of high-stakes situations before, but this was on a whole new level. His fighter was sleek and responsive, its controls glowing with alien symbols he was just beginning to understand. "Stick close to me," Zarethia's voice crackled over the comms. "We'll approach from the flank and disable their engines first." "Got it," Ethan replied, gripping the controls tightly. The Zareth Order ships were clustered near a large asteroid, their weapons trained on the convoy's expected path. They didn't notice the strike team until it was too late. "Engage," Zarethia commanded. The battle erupted in a flash of light and sound. Ethan's fighter weaved through enemy fire, his pulse pounding as he targeted one of the ship's engines. His shot hit its mark, and the ship spiraled out of control, crashing into a nearby asteroid. Zarithia's voice cut through the chaos. Good shot, Ethan. 2 more to go. The remaining enemy ships were more cautious, their pilots adapting quickly. The battle became a deadly game of cat and mouse, with both sides maneuvering through the treacherous asteroid field. Ethan found himself in a tight spot, his fighter pinned between 2 enemy ships. Just as they lined up their shots, Zarithia swooped in, her ship's weapons disabling one and forcing the other to retreat. Thanks for the save, Ethan said, his voice shaky. You owe me 1, Zarithia replied with a grin. Victory and revelations. The strike team's precision and coordination paid off. Within minutes, the Zareth Order's ships were either destroyed or disabled. The convoy's path was secure, and the mission was a success. Back aboard the Eclipse Spear, Ethan collapsed into a chair, his adrenaline finally wearing off. Zarithia stood beside him, her expression unreadable. You did well, she said. Better than I expected. Ethan chuckled weakly. High praise coming from you. She smiled faintly. Perhaps. But this is only the beginning. The Zareth Order will not stop here. We must be ready for whatever comes next. Ethan nodded, his determination solidifying. I'm with you. Whatever it takes. Zarithia's gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of her responsibilities seemed to lift. Together, we may just have a chance. As the Eclipse Spear left the asteroid field, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange sense of belonging. He had stumbled into this alliance by accident, but now, it felt like fate. Together, he and Zarithia were forging a path forward, one that could change the galaxy forever. Chapter 4, Unity Forged in Fire. A Threat Unveiled. Back on the Eclipse Spear, Ethan and Queen Zarithia regrouped with their team. The victory in the asteroid field was satisfying, but it was far from the end. The intercepted communications from the Zareth Order hinted at a much larger plan. A coordinated strike meant to destabilize the fragile alliance between humanity and the Olari Dominion. The threat loomed like a shadow over their newfound bond. In the war room, the holographic display flickered, showing a map of nearby systems. General Kalos paced the floor, his crystalline armor gleaming as he spoke. Our intelligence suggests that the Zareth Order is regrouping at a hidden base on Roketh Prime, a barren moon deep in the Dominion's outer territories. Their leader, Commander Valarath, is rallying forces for an all-out assault on the Dominion's capital. If they succeed, the Alliance will be blamed, and the Dominion could descend into civil war. Zarithia nodded, her gaze sharp and unyielding. We can't let that happen. We must strike first and dismantle their operation before they can act. Ethan leaned against the table, frowning at the map. And how do we do that? If they're on Roketh Prime, they'll be heavily fortified. Kalos gestured to the hologram. The moon's surface is inhospitable. Extreme winds, acidic storms, but it also masks most sensor signals. A small strike team could infiltrate without being detected. Let me guess, Ethan said, crossing his arms. You want me on that strike team? Zarithia turned to him, her golden eyes steady. You've proven yourself capable, Ethan. But this will be dangerous, more so than the asteroid ambush. Are you sure you're ready for this? Ethan met her gaze, determination flaring within him. I didn't ask for any of this, but I'm here now. I won't back down. Her expression softened slightly, and for the first time, she placed a hand on his shoulder. Good. We'll face this together. Infiltrating Roketh Prime. The strike team departed aboard a stealth transport, weaving through the chaotic storms of Roketh Prime. The ship trembled under the battering winds, its hull groaning as acidic rain hissed against the surface. Inside, the team prepared for the mission, their weapons checked and strategies reviewed. Ethan sat across from Zarithia, her regal armor gleaming faintly in the dim light. So, what's the plan when we find Valarath? He asked, tightening the straps on his harness. Zarithia's expression hardened. We cut the head off the serpent. Without him, the Zareth Order will fall into disarray. Simple enough, Ethan muttered. Except for the part where we're walking into a heavily fortified base. She smirked faintly. I thought you liked proving people wrong. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Fair point. As the transport descended, the team disembarked into a hostile landscape of jagged rocks and acidic rain. Guided by Kalos's intel, they navigated the treacherous terrain, avoiding patrols and automated defenses. The base itself was hidden within a massive canyon, its entrance heavily guarded. Using cloaking technology, the team slipped past the outer defenses and infiltrated the facility. Inside, the air was thick with tension. The Zareth Order's soldiers moved with precision, their loyalty to Valorath evident in their disciplined patrols. Ethan and Zarithia led the team deeper into the base, their steps silent and deliberate. As they approached the command center, Ethan whispered, "Why do I feel like this is going too smoothly?" Almost on cue, an alarm blared, and the facility erupted into chaos. The final battle. The team found themselves surrounded by Zareth soldiers, their cloaking devices rendered useless. Blaster fire lit up the narrow corridors as the two sides clashed in a brutal firefight. Ethan ducked behind cover, his heart pounding as bolts of energy whizzed past him. "We need to move," Zarithia shouted, her glowing blade cutting through an advancing soldier. Ethan fired a few shots, taking down another enemy. "Where's Valorath?" Kalos pointed to a massive reinforced door at the end of the corridor. "In there. But its sealed wheel need to override the controls." Zarithia nodded. "Ethan, cover me. I'll handle the door." She sprinted toward the control panel, her movements graceful yet purposeful. Ethan followed, providing cover fire as the rest of the team held off the Zareth forces. As Zarithia worked to bypass the security system, Ethan glanced at her, admiration flickering in his chest. "You really don't hesitate, do you?" he said. She smirked, her fingers flying over the controls. "And you don't give up. It's why we make a good team." The door hissed open, revealing the command center. Inside, Commander Valorath stood at the center of a massive hollow map, his dark armor glinting under the harsh lights. He turned, his reptilian features twisting into a sneer. "So, the queen herself comes to die," Valorath growled, his voice a low rumble. "How fitting." Zarithia stepped forward, her glowing blade igniting with a hum. "Your rebellion ends here, Valorath." The commander drew his own weapon, a massive, jagged blade crackling with energy. "We'll see." The battle was fierce and chaotic. Valorath was a towering figure, his strength and speed almost overwhelming. Zarithia met him blow for blow, her movements a perfect blend of precision and power. Meanwhile, Ethan fought off the remaining Zareth soldiers, his blaster fire keeping them at bay. As the duel reached its climax, Valorath swung his blade in a powerful arc, aiming to strike Zarithia down. She sidestepped at the last moment, delivering a devastating counterattack that disarmed him and left him vulnerable. Ethan seized the moment, firing a well-placed shot that struck Valorath's weapon hand, forcing him to his knees. "It's over," Zarithia said, her blade hovering near Valorath's throat. "Your rebellion dies with you." Valorath glared at her, hatred burning in his eyes. "You think this changes anything? The Zareth Order will rise again." "Not if we build something stronger," Zarithia replied, her voice calm yet resolute. With a swift motion, she struck him with the hilt of her blade, knocking him unconscious. A new beginning. The mission was a success. With Valorath captured and his forces in disarray, the Zareth Order's rebellion crumbled. The alliance between humanity and the Alari Dominion emerged stronger than ever, their unity solidified by the trial they had faced together. Back aboard the Eclipse Spear, Ethan stood with Zarithia on the observation deck, watching the stars drift past. The tension between them had softened, replaced by a sense of mutual respect and perhaps something more. "You didn't have to come with me," Zarithia said, her voice quiet. "But you did." "Why?" Ethan shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Guess I'm starting to believe in this alliance. And in you." She turned to him, her golden eyes glowing softly. "You've proven yourself, Ethan Carter. Not just to me, but to my people. Perhaps this accidental proposal of yours wasn't such a mistake after all." He chuckled. "You're saying I might actually be good at this?" "More than you realize," she replied, her smile genuine. As they stood together, the stars shimmering around them, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. He didn't know what the future held, but with Zarithia by his side, he was ready to face it. Together, they had turned an accident into an opportunity and perhaps, just maybe, something greater.